promote it and raise awareness as well. Thank you, dear Serge. Thank you so very much. So now we have another session with Miss Lori. Are you with us, Miss Lori? Could you please let us know if you can hear us? Maybe someone could help.
I'm here.
Fascinating. Fascinating. We can hear you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I hope I'm not mispronouncing. I know I'm going to mispronounce Sep's name, but to the music creator, he's just done my work for me. I think we're done now. And I say that because music is the universal connector, right? And even though I've heard the song in English, and even though I didn't hear it in English just now, you can just tell, you can feel it in the music. The music is connecting our hearts and the flow of it. And this is a beautiful way to help us take a pause, which is the topic of my conversation today. But I'm going to pause here because Louisa might want to say something before I launch into my topic.
Я маю представити Лорі.
I have to introduce you, dear Lori.
I got so
I was
excited.
just checking if you're present. I know how inspired you are with everything what's going on. And with this song, with children's drawings, I'm really so grateful for your participation because you are the person we wanted to share this emotion so much with. And I wanted to say about Miss Lori, we have a wonderful relationship. For the last few years, it all started due to Susan, Edward's Mediation Academy. That's how we met. And since then, we have been in touch. And it's not the first time that Miss Lori has been participating in events to support Ukrainian mediators so that we could have more opportunities to take care of ourselves and to slow down. We have materials Miss Lori created so that we could use some techniques, tapping, breathing techniques. From time to time, Mommy Lori asks you, why are you not sleeping? So she's keeping in touch. She's checking if I managed to eat. Thank you so much for this caring attitude. This really helps so much and makes so much difference. I want to say that during the preparation, Sandy was working there, of course, and with all team, we did tapping techniques with all our team. We had a responsible person to remind us about this. So all of us all together, we did that because it really helps. Even if you just need just a minute, to have rest, to decompress and to focus. So thank you, really, really huge thank you from my bottom of our heart for sharing this. And for the specific course for creating mediators online. This was so-called safe island where we could meet and take some care about ourselves. So thank you for this opportunity, for letting us slow down a bit. And this is Friday night, it's a high time we all took care of ourselves. So the floor is yours, Miss Lori. I'm ready to rest my case, so to say.
And I hear the familiar voice of a translator that helped us, I believe, in the fall as well. And I would love just a moment of a gallery view to see some of the familiar faces that I've come to love so much through our time and our work together. I know some of you need to keep your videos off, but I just love seeing your beautiful faces and how much you have inspired me through our work together. And it's just an honor to be here. This could not have been a more perfect setup for what we are going to hopefully experience in the next hour together. And also hopefully a reminder to those of you who know some of my techniques to remember them and to remember to use them. And before we go any further, I also want to acknowledge how sorry I am about the conditions for which so many of you are living under right now. Whether you're in the Ukraine or anywhere in the world, the chaos in the world has become extraordinary, really. And in that place of war and conflict and loss and displacement, the work of being mediators and peace builders becomes ever more important, but ever more stressful. And so, to begin with the inspiration of children's artwork, right? How quickly can we return to what I call gratitude, love, joy, and wonder than when we remember the innocence of children and when we allow children to inspire us in that moment? Uh, and then to have music on top of that. And when you just even look at the pictures, and I had the privilege of seeing all of these beautiful children's pictures, to be inspired by them, it just allows you to take a breath and remember that innocence for just a moment in the midst of the overwhelm, in the midst of the compassion fatigue, in the midst of all that you're carrying. uh, as a mediator, your sessions are not just about whatever this particular conflict is. It's about everything that everyone in that room is carrying into the session. It's their inner world, it's their relationships, their family, our communities, the conflicts, the state of the world, which can often leave us feeling helpless and hopeless. And here, your job as mediators and peace builders is to be resilient through all of that. And it's not an easy task. And so given that, the personal challenges that we carry, it's so important that we turn our attention to ourselves. And I do realize that it's Friday night, and you have had a very long week. You've been absorbing lots of information about your profession and about how to be better and do better. And this is an opportunity for you to just focus on yourself right now, and to remember the reason why you became mediators. How many of you still remember that under all of the pressure that you're under? But in that pressure, we can lose touch with ourselves. We can lose touch with our center. We can lose touch with that sense of inner safety that carries us through these uncertain times. And so it's really about putting ourselves first. And in order to do that, I want to bring us into the present moment a bit, as if we're not already there with artwork and music. But let's just take a moment to pause. And I would ask you to put your hand on your heart and just allow yourself to feel your butt in the chair and your feet on the floor. And just taking a moment to take that full breath in and exhaling that breath. And just noticing what you notice. Imagine that you can erase the blackboard of your mind and that you are breathing through your heart. So imagine inhaling through your heart, pausing and exhaling through your heart. Inhaling again through your heart, pausing, exhaling through your heart. And perhaps taking a moment to set an intention to bring yourself fully present in this moment. Touching into one thing that you may have to be grateful for. Perhaps even thinking about one thing to be grateful for that you never thought of before. And thinking about that children's art and music, and feeling what's possible for love to arise when we're feeling gratitude. And in that presence of love and gratitude, noticing in this pause whether it's possible for a spark of joy to emerge. And if joy is elusive, tuning into that beautiful music. And noticing how in the presence of gratitude and love and joy, we can open up into the energy of wonder. The wonder of you and all you've passed through. The wonder of possibility. The wonder of this shared connection we have in committing to healing ourselves, our children, and our world. And most importantly, the wonder that whatever you choose to heal in yourself sets up a resonance field for that healing to unfold in our world, so that truly your greatest service work in the world is being in service to your own healing first. And just taking a moment to breathe into that. Noticing how it's possible to breathe through your heart into a deeper sense of stillness. Imagining an infinity circuit that connects your heart to each of the hearts on this call, each of the hearts who will be looking at the recording, and connecting our hearts to the divine. From this place, taking a moment to listen for some words from your heart. What is it that your heart wants you to know in this moment? And just listening for whatever arises. It might be in the form of a word or a phrase, a body sensation, or simply a sense of knowing. And taking another full inhale through your heart and exhaling through your heart. And with just a few more breaths now, when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes. And I know with our language barrier, and I so wish I could speak Ukrainian. Just a show of hands, how many of you take time throughout the day to pause, to do something like this, to shift your energy? Anybody? Show of hands. Okay, I don't see many hands up here. Okay, we have one, two. Okay. Well, I hope that you'll be inspired to do more of this in the days ahead, and you can put your hands down now. So one of the things we want to address today is to explore that hidden cost of caring. You know, that power of this simple pause, what I call an energy shifter, to shift our minds from whatever worry or concern or anything that we may be stirring about, to come back to the present moment. And in that place of the present moment, we can begin to foster a sense of inner safety. Now, look, it doesn't happen in 3 minutes. It happens with practice and practice and practice. But we have been so indoctrinated into doing more, being more, running faster, taking on more responsibility. And we have not really been indoctrinated in taking time for the pause. And I call it the pause because I'm taking that phrase from a beautiful young mediator I have been working with for a few months, who coined that phrase, the pause, and I've been using it ever since. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her later. But that pause allows us the opportunity to return to ourselves, to return to that inner safety in the midst of uncertainty. And so, you know, you all have these very valuable skills as mediators, right? You've learned how to actively listen. You've learned communication skills. You've learned problem solving skills. You've learned patience and perseverance. You've learned how to be culturally sensitive. You've learned to be neutral and compassionate. And yet, there are times when those skills are elusive. I will say that's the truth for me, and possibly the truth for you as well. So when you think about, you know, have you ever left a mediation session or a hard conversation or a difficult day and thought, I wasn't at my best today. I wasn't thinking my best. I wasn't really connected with the skills that I have learned and that I've become gifted and talented in. Anybody have one of those days ever? You can just raise your physical hand. And so in those times, I'm here to tell you that you didn't lose access to that. I mean, you didn't lose the skill. You lost access to the skill. And I'm going to explain more of that in a bit. But it wasn't because you lacked experience. It's not because you didn't care. It's because you're carrying too much. Because your heart and your brain and your body are in overwhelm or in compassion fatigue. In those times, we don't even feel safe in our own bodies. And just a note to acknowledge that I know there are other people from other areas on the call, but for you as Ukrainians, you are all dealing with traumatic stress. And these practices become even more difficult when we have been attuned to that trauma for so long, when our bodies have been in overdrive and hypervigilance. But these techniques that we're talking about today can give you a gentle reprieve. We can train our bodies that it is safe in the present moment. and that we can take this precious time out to feed our bodies and our minds and our hearts with safety and a sense of that access to who we know ourselves to be. But unfortunately, over the years, I've worked with genocide survivors. I've worked in Rwanda. I've worked with mediators in Rwanda. I've worked in post-school shooting environments here in the United States. I've worked in Australia with Aboriginal and refugee communities, and of course, these last few years with many of you on the call. And what happens when pressure rises, our perception narrows. We don't think as clearly. We become less discerning. We become less aware of the possibilities. And we lose access to our greatest human talents and gifts, including that creative problem solving, a sense of inner wisdom, a sense of compassion and connectedness. Somehow, our brains are full of worry and anxiety, trying to find certainty, right? And in that search for certainty, we begin to be even more anxious and more unable to access that inner safety, right? And so oftentimes, at least this is how I grew up, and certainly in my professional life and what I know of the professional life that I of my clients and the leaders that I serve, we have been taught, we've been praised for how much we carry. More responsibility, the better. The more complicated situations, the better. The more we carry someone's pain somehow, we're taught that helps us be good enough and deserving. But that's under that kind of pressure, we lose that access to what is true about us, that we have these skills. And in those times when I've lost access to myself and my skills and my gifts and talents, I mean, those have been some of the most educational experiences, some of the best teachers for me. And I say that a little facetiously because it's not always comfortable. And you've heard that phrase, we teach what we most need to learn. And I just hate when that happens. I hate when I have to remember all those things that I'm supposed to be teaching. But it happens because we're human. And so this is something I really want to make clear today, that you do already possess extraordinary skills, and you know how to listen, you know how to stay curious, you know how to hold more than one perspective at a time. And the real issue is not capacity, it's not learning another skill. It's the challenge is really being able to access the skills you already have. And so when you think about it for a moment, when you're overwhelmed, which of those capacities are the hardest to reach for you? Which of those capacities that you value the most that are hardest to reach? Is it your communication? Is it your ability to be compassionate? Is it your ability to problem solve? Is it your ability to be patient? And just notice the difference between when a mediation session is going really well, or a conversation with a partner and a loved one, versus when it's not going well. What is lost there for you? And just to say that I do have a guidebook that goes along with this presentation. And so hopefully you will have downloaded that. You don't need it right now, but you can also refer to it later to remind you of some of these questions that I'm asking. And so What we lose access to are the qualities that allow us to be intelligent and to depend on our training and our competence. But we're not thinking in that moment that we're losing access to intelligence or competence. We're thinking about those specific skills. And then we begin to judge ourselves for having a human moment where we're overwhelmed or fatigued. So this is all about restoring access. And I'm going to talk about the physiological aspects of restoring access. But first, I want to tell you a story. Some of you have heard this story before, but I think it's important. It's certainly a big turning point in my life. It was an experience I had with a Rwandan woman the first time I went to Rwanda, and I had prepared myself by looking deeply in my heart. Could I sit with someone who had murdered 100 people? Could I work with someone who was living with AIDS and whose family had been destroyed in front of her? Could I sit with orphan head of households who were caring for young children? And in that preparation, I was really preparing to see my anything in me that would contract under these very extreme circumstances. And so there came a time in the first week that I was there that I went to a church service in which there were 300 Rwandans and me, the white chick, standing at the back of the room and people being curious about what I was doing there. And there was no translator, so I could not offer any words. And it was a 3-hour church service, which was very intense, and people were catharting their pain and their grief and their trauma. And afterwards, this group of about a dozen older women who were clearly living with the ravages of war and all that had happened, the scars of war, HIV, and they were looking at me very skeptically, and I understood, I was a foreign person. What am I doing here? What do I have to offer? And as those dozen women surrounded me, one woman stepped forward and she took down her blouse to show me her mutilated chest. And in that moment, had I not prepared myself as I did to heal my own wounds and trauma, my ego could have exploded and completely taken me out of that present moment. And all I remember is taking a breath into this place of safety inside of me. And I instinctively put my hand to her chest, and she put her hand to mine. And we looked deeply into each other's eyes with no words. And there was this sense of connection and presence that I had never experienced before to that depth. And when the moment was over, we stepped back, we smiled, and I noticed that all the other women were smiling too. In that moment, not having words, but simply being present to each other was enough. And I think you can appreciate how important it is to be able to stay fully present no matter what you are listening to, no matter what you are being asked to negotiate. And that experience really taught me the power of this internal regulation, this power of working on my own self first, and the power of presence that allowed me to trust myself in that moment when there was no rule book. There was nothing in my training on page 147 that told me how to do or navigate this situation. And so, the techniques we're talking about today, again, require practice, 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 and they're not necessarily the deeper work that I'm talking about, but they are a lead in, they're access to that deeper work. And so, let me just talk about a little bit about the physiology of our heart, brain, body connection. And I know you've studied a lot of this in your own efforts to heal your traumas and to stay steady and resilient in the face of what you're dealing with. Um, but under stress, so the heart is the main organ in the body, believe it or not, and the heart has its own brain. And when the heart is in higher states of gratitude, love, joy, and wonder, it communicates with our prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain where those gifts and talents reside, that problem solving, the creativity, sense of inner wisdom, sense of connectedness and compassion, that sense of inner trust and safety. But when we're stressed or traumatized, the heart is sending signals to that survival portion of our brain where we're simply in contraction mode and our focus really narrows to survival only, and we lose access to those higher brain functions. And so the work that we're talking about in the pause is taking a moment to optimize that heart brain body connection so that we physically can feel that sense of inner safety and trust ourselves more. And if you've ever woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about something or contemplating or trying to figure out how you can find the certainty in something, you already know this sense of how your mind can get flooded. And 3 o'clock in the morning is not necessarily the best time to be finding answers. In fact, the worry cycle can kick in very easily. And the what I call stirring, you just go over and over the same thing with no resolution. And the possibilities shrink at that moment. And so I have made a personal rule never to make big decisions at 3 in the morning or on an empty stomach, which is why I'm constantly asking Louisa if she's eating and she's breathing and taking care of herself. And that's just the experience of when we get contracted. Now, what really fascinates me after 22 years in the field doing this work in the most traumatized communities is that, how different the same life can look when we're a little more settled, when we feel a little safer in ourselves. Same circumstances, same people, but a completely different experience when we're coming from that place of trust. One day everything is falling apart, and the next day when we get a good night's sleep and we're doing this self-care and we're finding time to take the pause where we need to. And I think we should pause every hour for just a minute or two. In fact, I start every session with a little bit of tap and breathe, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. I share that opening pause that we did so that people come fully present to our work together. And it's very simple, when our hearts and our brains and our bodies are in a state of what neuroscience calls coherence, that means all our systems are operating optimally, then our focus expands. We have access to clarity, to perspective, to that creativity we need in the moment, to making wise decisions and to holding space for other people to make wise decisions. And so that's the good news. We don't really have to wait for life to become perfect to regain access to those skills. We don't have to force the wisdom or force the clarity. We don't even need certainty to to access in those skills. In fact, certainty is never promised, and it's never delivered, no matter what circumstance you're thinking about. But somehow the brain goes into overdrive. So when you're able to experience trusting yourself and feeling safe in your body, even in the midst of uncertainty. Imagine how much more powerful you are in those moments, not just for yourself, but for your clients and your family and your community. So let me tell you a little bit about this inspirational woman who inspired me to call this work The Pause. Back in February, I met this woman whose husband had been missing for 3 months already in the war. And unfortunately, that is still true today. And in that moment when I met her, she didn't know if he was alive. She didn't know if he was gone. She didn't know if she would ever have an answer. And like so many of you living through this war, she was carrying and is carrying, continues to carry that unbearable weight of not knowing. Not for hours, not for days, not for months. And while what stayed with me really wasn't only the uncertainty, it was everything she was carrying inside of this. Still working, still supporting others, still showing up for her family, even volunteering and attending support groups, which can often be triggering in themselves. She was still trying to live her life while a huge part of her heart was grieving and waiting for news. And at some point in our first session, as we did some of these somatic release tools, she felt that the most intense part of her grief and trauma in that moment was this sense of that she was helpless to help him. Of course she was. And I remember thinking, what answer could anyone give to that? There was no answer to be given in those circumstances. There was no certainty to give her. The fear is real, the helplessness is real. So we didn't try to solve uncertainty. Instead, I used these techniques to help her settle just enough that she wasn't completely consumed by it. And as we slowed down, as we breathed, as we did this tapping work, she just had some moments where she could feel a little more settled, a little more safe, and a little more in the present moment. And in that moment, something shifted. The conditions were still the same. Her husband was still missing. The uncertainty was still there. Questions were still there. But in that moment, what shifted was her relationship to all of that uncertainty. She could be more connected with herself and more present to what was actually in front of her. And as she grew quiet, I noticed a small smile cross her face. And she said, I can hear him telling me to breathe. And there was just even a little laugh, the way he always told me to breathe when I was stressed. And as many of you know, I'm a crier, but I cry from just the inspiration that these tools could bring that moment to someone in this power of the pause. And in that moment, she had that connection back. And of course, it's not going to, life is going to happen again. But every time she practices that pause, she goes a little bit more deeply into trusting herself. Now, it's not perfect, right? We're not living in a perfect world, but that's the power of what I call the return to ourselves and what we know to be true, even in the most dire of circumstances. So life keeps teaching me that the bravest people I've ever met move forward despite there being any certainty. and by and that they have this resilience. And by resilience, I don't mean pushing through, working harder, faster, stronger, doing more, carrying more. The resilience to be able to turn inside and take care of ourselves. That ability to return to this place where our hearts and our brains and our bodies are in coherence that allows us to access those skills and talents we already possess. And so, being human means we do lose ourselves from time to time. And the question is never that we will lose ourselves, but the question is how quickly will we choose to come back to center and to that groundedness and safety in our bodies. And so that returning to self doesn't wait for better circumstances. It doesn't wait for certainty. It's about trusting that there is a place inside of ourselves that is always there, we can always access. But, a word about trauma, again, this requires a great deal of practice. And so it's not that it's the cure-all, but it's a start. And so let's do a little tap and breathe experience. I know some of you know what this is, but this is a good refresher. Mama Lori wants to know if you're still practicing tap and breathe. And if you're not, we have a chance to do it now. Uh, but let me just ask, because I forgot what time. How much time do we have left? I forgot what time we started. I was so excited by the children's pictures and the music. Can someone tell me?
Ми маємо за програмою, ми мали би
According to the
завершити
program,
11:30.
we had to finish at 8:30,
Кожного дня трішки
but every
затримуємося.
day we're a bit behind the schedule.
Yes, but I don't want you all to interfere with your sleep, so I will do my best. Okay, so this is a very simple exercise. You just have to follow along with me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about EFT tapping. We have 300 research studies that prove that tapping on certain acupressure points allows us to send signals to the brain that it's safe in the middle of uncertainty and stress. And you can look on my website to see all the science, because we don't have time to go into that now. But if you bring yourselves, for those who haven't experienced this before, bring yourself to this exercise as if you are a child experiencing this for the first time. So I'd like you to take a moment to put your hand on your heart, and I just want you to tune into your breathing on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being that there's no contraction in your breathing. You can breathe fully and expansively. And 10 being you can hardly breathe. You're so contracted, you can hardly breathe. And just measure on that scale of 0 to 10 where your breathing is now, and just make a note of how expanded or contracted your breathing is. And you can open your eyes. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do tapping with what I call straw breathing. And so we're going to make a sound on the inhale and a sound on the exhale. And it seems silly, but this allows you to figure out whether you're actually breathing or not. Because many of us who are so stressed, we're not even aware that we're not inhaling and exhaling. And this is going to look a little silly, but we're going to start at the top of the head, and we're simply going to tap here and just follow along with me. And as you tap on the side of at the top of your head, you're going to take that full inhale, pause, full exhale. Here at the beginning of the eyebrow, inhale, pause, exhale. Side of the eye, inhale, Pause, exhale. Under the eye, inhale. Pause, exhale. Under the nose, inhale. Pause, exhale. Under the lips, inhale. Pause, exhale. Here on the chest, inhale. Pause, exhale. Under the arm, inhale. Pause, exhale. Top of the hand between the fourth and the fifth finger. Inhale. Pause, exhale. And now I'd like you to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, tune into your breathing, 0 to 10, and noticing if there's been any shift in your breathing. Simply noticing if it's a little easier to breathe in this moment. And you can open your eyes. Now, normally we would do another 1 or 2 rounds of this to really settle in. And the directions for this are also in your guidebook, so you can return to this, but keep in mind 2 or 3 rounds of this tap and breathe several times throughout the day will help you return to yourself. And I know I did not transform your lives in that 3 minutes. However, it's a start. And so from this place, after this tap and breathe, I want to share with you what I call the presence mantra. A mantra is simply a meditation. It's like a focus point of meditation. And I'm going to repeat the words for you first and the meaning behind them, and I'm going to then ask you to repeat them along with me. And so the words are, I breathe, I remember, I surrender, I return to the present moment. And so when I say I breathe, it's my signal to myself that I'm about to be in the pause. And that means just taking a little space to breathe and choose to reconnect. When I say I remember, for me, that means I remember the truth of who I really am. A loving, compassionate, talented, caring person. To reconnect and remember my wisdom and my skills and my steadiness that become so hard to reach. And when I say I surrender, for me that means not giving up, but letting go of the struggle that is taking me out of the present moment, and to control what I can control in this moment, which is simply to breathe into the moment. And when I say I return to the present moment, that means coming back to this moment where I have the most access to what is true about me and my gifts and my talents. So let's practice this slowly together. And again, I would ask you to place your hands on your heart. And this heart point is the meridian acupressure point that helps soothe your stress and your anxiety and your worry. So even through the day, if you don't have time to tap on the top of your head where other people are looking, you can simply place your hand on your heart and take a few breaths. But for now, let's close our eyes and do this mantra together. And you can repeat this silently to yourself or out loud. I breathe. and take a breath. I remember and take a breath. I surrender and take a breath. I return to presence and take a breath. I breathe. I remember. I surrender. I return to presence. And now taking a moment to imagine that infinity circuit that connects your heart to yourself and your heart to the others on the call and to the divine. And listen to some wisdom from your heart once again. What is it that your heart wants you to know in this moment? And again, just gently, when you feel ready, opening your eyes. And just imagine that it's possible, if you practice this enough through your day, that your body will begin to remember this quiet space. Your body will become attuned to finding that place in the pause where you can feel a little safer and a little more trusting in yourself. You know, again, to emphasize that the courage is not about taking action in certainty. I don't know if you've heard that. Is it a Ukrainian phrase that the only certain thing is death and taxes? And while I love certain things, I don't like death and taxes. But I don't have to worry about that when I'm in a place of trusting myself. And when I can rely on that trust enough that I could be present to that Rwandan woman, that I could be present to this beautiful young Ukrainian mediator who inspired me. And as mediators, you don't create certainty. What you create are the conditions under which positive negotiation can emerge, in which really miracles and possibilities can emerge. And so I would love to have at least, I wish we had more time. There was a place for questions and answers. But before I leave you with a blessing that I have prepared for you, just wondering if we have just a couple of questions or comments. Everybody's tired. You're like, I've been here for 5 days listening to this. It's 8:30 at night. I'm thinking about what I'm having for dinner. And if you're not thinking about what you are having for dinner, you should be. And you should be thinking about how you're going to erase the blackboard of your mind so you can sleep well tonight. And in the middle of the night, if you do wake up, remember the power of the pause. And remember that Mama Lori is whispering in your ear, take care of yourself first. So let me leave you with this blessing. May you remember that you do not have to carry everything alone. May you keep developing the capacity to return to yourself, to the present moment, no matter what is going on around you. May you trust your ability to reconnect with your clarity, your steadiness, your compassion, your love for yourself, and your wisdom. May you trust that support inside of yourself. May you trust your own well being. And may you bring that well being in the energy of all the lives that you touch. And may you remember the power of the pause. I'm so deeply, deeply grateful for this opportunity to be with you. Know that I and my huge tribe of people are praying for you every day and looking forward to what happens during the reconciliation and healing time, which you, as mediators in this beautiful academy, are so committed to. I'm going to give you my Zoom hug. And I do hope that you will practice some of these things and you will learn to trust that inner safety.
Лорі, щиро дякую за цю практику, за
Lori,
таке
really, thank you very much for this practice, for this
чули
pause that we
У нас
found.
в чаті є одне
In
запитання.
our chat, we have one question.
What to do if someone has become emotionally numb?
Honestly, if you tap and breathe with them, I promise you, you are going to see a difference. But you must be able to learn this tap and breathe for yourself first. And the again in your there are guidelines in your guidebook. This power of tap and breathe is enormous, and you may have to tap and breathe for 10 or 15 minutes with that person. But it's more important not solving the problem, not jumping in and getting dysregulated with them, but as you tap and breathe with them, you both can get into that more regulated space. And that is the most powerful tool you can have in the moment. Now, obviously that begs the question of trauma, the right trauma healing techniques and everything, but that tap and breathe will regulate you so that you can hold space for your client. And if you think the tapping on the different points look silly, just tap on your heart point and watch what happens. Practice with your colleagues before you practice it with clients or loved ones. Practice it with kids. Kids love this.
Дякую, Лорі.
Thank you very much, Lori.
Точно
We will
намагаємося
definitely
використовувати це
be
частіше,
using
але
it
якщо
more
нам
often.
потрібна підтримка,
But
і
if we
ми
do need
усвідомлюємо, що
support
іноді
and we understand
це
that we
так
do
дуже
not
часто
breathe, and
трапляється,
it
і
happens
це дуже
often
поверхневе
when
дихання,
the breathing is
ми
superficial,
зупиняємося,
we
робимо
stop,
паузу
we
і
pause,
намагаємося подбати
and
про
we
себе
try
на
to take
найпростіший
care of ourselves, at
доступний для
least in
нас
such
завжди
a way
спосіб.
that is
Бо
already
єдине
available.
питання,
The only
це
question is,
допомагає, воно точно
it
допомагає.
helps, it
Воно
definitely helps.
допомагає тиск
And
нормалізувати,
it
воно
helps
допомагає
normalize
робити регулярно.
pressure if you do it regularly.
Питання в тому,
But the question is,
має бути ця регулярність і
we need to
дисципліна,
do it
самодисципліна
regularly and
забезпечити
have
собі час
self-discipline to
приділяти
find
себе.
time to take care of yourself.